Hello, everybody. Welcome to this presentation on the new British standard for building performance evaluation. Just get it started here. My name's Fionn Stevenson, and I'm the campaign director for the Building Performance Network. And today's discussion is going to discover what the new British standard is. So first of all, it was developed by the British Standards Institute and sponsored by the government department, BEIS, and it's also been championed by us at the Building Performance Network. It's basically both a process and a product, and it provides a framework for carrying out BPE. It will hopefully give clear guidance on methods to be used and also their associated standard of application. It's the result of writing by two authors and preparation by a committee team who've got extensive BPE experience. We've been having regular meetings to draft the standard, and we include manufacturers, consultants, and academics. Why is it needed? Well, basically, the building sector is in a car crash. We have a big building performance gap, which we know exists, and at the moment, we don't have a good means of addressing that. There is no regulatory requirement for building performance evaluation. Why is it really needed? Government is currently trying to deregulate where possible, and BS40101 can support industry to help it to carry out BPE as routine and regular. But it can also highlight where industry is not able to do this, where regulation is needed. BS40101 helps to mainstream BPE, and this should result in reducing costs for kit. And that's something that people often worry about, is how much it costs to do BPE. Insurers are still wary of BPE in terms of professional indemnity, and we're hoping that a new British standard can reassure them that in terms of costs associated with issues raised, the new standard provides very clear boundaries in terms of who's responsible for what. And there are also social factors associated with developing a standard. Indoor air quality is obviously gaining increasing attention due to COVID, and fuel poverty is on the rise because energy prices are rising. And for both of these, we need BPE, we need a standard so that building performance gap can be reduced. And of course, there's the technological factors. Without feedback from BPE, we can't reduce the gap. And without having a shared set of methods, carefully defined, and a suitable ontology for storing data, it's very difficult for industry to benchmark itself. So there are three key areas where we can hope for alignment. I mean, there are a number of different institutions and NGOs looking at BPE guidance at the moment and targeting BPE. So there's a real opportunity to align. And the BPE standard offers consistency, and that really helps different organizations to be able to align around this. At the same time, we're very clear that the ontology for the British standard probably still needs further development. We have tried to capture what should be measured and how it should be measured, how it should be collected as data. But in terms of meta-analysis and wider data considerations, those still need to be developed. So where are we now, in fact, with the development? Well, it is a circular process, and we've designed the draft, and that's now out for consultation. And in effect, that's a form of testing. And that closed on the 28th of August. And we will then be involved during the autumn with revising the standard, taking on board the comments through the committee and redrafting the standard. The idea is to launch the standard, hopefully, in early 2022. So what you really want to know is, how does it work? There are a number of stages involved in the standard. The first is to establish a BPE plan at project inception and establish responsibilities. This is then followed by making sure that all buildings take a screening process. All buildings in the project are involved in the screening process. And at the same time, there are early occupation studies to give early diagnostic findings. At the same time, there's a full BPE to be carried out on a sample of buildings, and that involves both in-use test and monitoring and a post-construction review. Associated with the screening and early occupation and the full BPE sample, it's also possible to do investigative BPE, either as a standalone from the last two stages, or as something that's done alongside the full BPE, and that might involve methods that are not defined in the standard. And finally, the last stage is to write up the report and make sure it's actioned. So the meat of the whole standard, what does it actually look like? This sets out the framework, and the colored boxes are the main thing to be concerned with here. So once the plan has been produced, the first box in the top left-hand corner, the early occupation, that consists of a number of methods, short and sharp, to diagnose any early problems to do with handover, induction, occupant experience. At the same time, there is also the commencement of the in-use 12-month screening, which includes start and end utility meter readings for energy, looking at temperatures and monitoring temperature and relative humidity, taking account of occupancy and floor area, and also having a bus type occupant questionnaire. So that screening is fairly light touch, but the idea is that if we do that light touch screening on all the buildings in a project, together with the early occupancy diagnosis, we can then think carefully in terms of the post-construction review and in-use test and monitoring. When we come down to looking at just a sample of buildings for those, we can focus on what's really needing to be investigated closely. So for the post-construction review, the design, construction, and maintenance review includes airtightness testing, commissioning, looking at commissioning results, looking at acoustics, examining the handover and user experience, looking at maintenance procedures, information, and going over the drawings in general. There's also a site inspection with a photographic record, a review of controls, an assessment of condensation and mold risk, thermal imaging survey, artificial electric lighting, a spot check, air permeability testing again, also checking the ventilation flow rates for MVHR and the like, and basically setting out all the building parameters. And alongside the review, there's the in-use monitoring and testing, and that's basically ongoing energy consumption, water consumption, indoor air quality monitored by proxy using carbon dioxide sensors, also taking account of the external temperature, and also looking at the fabric performance of the building. So that basically summarizes the main part of the standard. And then there is this other stage, the investigative stage. Now, in terms of what the standard will support, it's there to support industry to move towards the future buildings, home building standard. It's also to support the Future Homes Task Force. It will also support other standards such as the PAS retrofit standards and passive house. It will also support, hopefully, the future building standard itself when that comes through. It's being developed in tandem with a couple of other British standards. So BS40102 is on retrofit, health and well-being and overheating. And then BS8536 is a revisit of an asset management BIM soft landings type standard. So hopefully all three standards will interweave, and the BS40101 will support these two standards by offering a clear pathway for methods to be used. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, the strength is the standard is recognized. BSI is a strong institution. It's going to be comprehensive. The weaknesses are that you have to buy it, and it won't be mandatory, and it could be too onerous. We welcome your comments on it, further comments. There are great opportunities to align the sector, to integrate with BIM and focus on de-risking. However, there are also several threats. The BPE landscape is confusing, and the standard needs to cut through that. There are conflicting standards, and we really need to get the insurers on board. How are we and the Building Performance Network supporting? We're sharing our response with members. We've got a policy forum looking at the standard, and our own website and our own projects are going to help signpost existing guidance for various sectors and to provide a new toolkit and training to support BS 40101. The next key steps for this standard are to address government, industry, and clients in relation to 3 asks. One is to mainstream BPE by aligning it with quality assurance and risk management. We also need to impress on government the need for specific BPE regulation to support the future home standard and future building standard where needed. And finally, we need BPE training to support all of the above widely, CPD and academic programs. And hopefully the Building Performance Network will be able to support all of this. Thank you very much.